What's up, it's Jay here, Athlete Fix, and today we are talking about the importance of the order that you organise your joints into to create maximum stability and help prevent pain. That's coming up next. Hey, so the order of organisation is the topic that we're talking about today, and quite a sort of vague term, but hopefully by the end of this video it will make sense as to kind of what we're referring to here when we talk about that order. And the order that we're talking about is this idea that's been coined in with many different expressions: core to extremity, core to sleeve, as sometimes Kelly Starrett explains it. But essentially it's this idea that we get everything set up in the center or the spine first to create stability in the midline, so that your stability of all the peripheral joints further down the chain are in a much stronger position as a result of that. It has to start here and spread out. It doesn't work the other way around. This is the base that everything else sits on, so it makes sense that this has to come first and then creates the potential stability that you can have of your joints further down the chain. Start of the chain, end of the chain. So what's really kind of going on here? Now the order, the important thing here is that, as I said before, everything when we talk about the shoulder, this example, that the shoulder blades, or the scapula, which is basically where the socket of the ball and socket joint is. And this is the shoulder blade with the socket. Here's the ball of the ball and socket joint. So the scapular position dictates where the socket is. So it dictates the base, and then obviously how stable a position the base is in. So the scapula then sits on the rib cage. Ribs come from the spine. Hopefully you still follow me here. So that, what I mean by that, the reason I'm telling you in that order is because if you follow that sort of pathway all the way back to the start, it all starts with here. So when you're going about setting up, whether it's for a lift or even just at your seated position at the desk when you're typing, it's important that you think about setting up the posture at the midline first before you then go and set up the rest of your joints, so your shoulder in this case. The shoulder blades basically piggyback on your thoracic spine or up back here. So they basically go where it goes. What I mean by that, and this is where I've had a couple of times people have been trying to do the right rehab exercise and things, they haven't been getting the best effect from it because the position, the order of organisation hasn't been there. The order of activation hasn't been there. If you're sitting in quite a kyphotic sort of rounded upper back position, all that means, and I'm here and I try and do all the best shoulder blade squeeze activation exercises or my rotator cuff exercises or whatever it may be, it's unlikely to be effective because you can't fully retract or posterior tilt or get your shoulder blades into the right position if your back is in the right position. So if you're either sitting in a rounded sort of slouch back position or you're trying to do one of your say rotator cuff exercises in this position, your piggybacking shoulder blades are slouched forwards because that's where they're sitting. What the base they're sitting on, the person they're piggybacking on has slouched forwards, so they follow accordingly. Now then it means that unless the person they're piggybacking on comes back up, they can't. If you try and retract your shoulder blades, if you try and draw them back whilst you're in this position rounded here, you won't be able to. It's like having a door slightly open and trying to tell someone to try and squeeze through it. They're only going to be able to get so far. You do the equivalent of open that kind of anatomical door, so to speak, by lifting your chest up. Then your shoulder blades can get back into the position, and then it creates this potential to create stability all the way down the chain. So what do I mean by that? What do I mean by that more specifically? So, you know, it's a kind of an easier to understand concept rather than just being this vague, ambiguous thing. Because we talk about stability a lot, and it is so important. I've had someone this week who was, you know, typing on a desk and having, you know, more strain in their sort of their wrist extensors here, that kind of tennis elbow area. I had a guy who was got pain when he was just doing a regular deadlift at quite a light load for him, and a guy who was having pain when he was lowering down from a shoulder press, having the elbows kind of flare out to the side. So 3 completely sort of distinct different examples, but they have all one thing in common, and that common denominator was that they were all working extremity to core, distal to proximal, from further out to closer in that order. Or in other words, they weren't creating stability at the shoulders first in their respective positions, which then led to pain, tightness, weakness further down into the muscles further down. I'm going to show you an example in a second. Imagine you have people sort of stacked on top of each other. The person at the base, at the bottom, his position is of paramount importance, because his stability will create the subsequent stability, how easy or hard it's going to be for everyone else to balance on top. The more of a stable position the guy at the bottom's in, the easier, the less work everyone else standing on top of him is going to have to do. The more wobbly a position he's in, it's not that the other guys won't be able to balance, but they're going to have to work a lot harder, they're going to have to think about it a lot more, they're going to have to make a lot more adjustments to stay afloat, and if it's really bad at the base, they're probably ultimately just going to topple off. So what did I do? I did some retests, I did some changes in spinal position first. So you set the spine first, open that door, allow the scaps to set into a stable position, then retest the motions, retest things that are painful. In the case of the shoulder press, it was only happening on the way down. We got into externally rotate, armpits forward, rotate and elevate, some of the different cues you probably heard for describing this, and then lower down. Now when we talk about active shoulders, this idea is just getting to being an equivalent sort of on the shelf position, but when we're in positions of elevation, and so that's what we're talking about, why we will talk about, you know, armpits forward and screw your arms into the bar, break the bar, pull the bar apart, all these different cues trying to get to the same end result. This is the reason we're saying it. What are we doing? We're getting the shoulder into its closed packed position. That's the most sort of stable, congruent position. We're getting maximal kind of tension and capsular wind up, taking advantage of the most sort of stable position that the ligaments of the joint can get into, and it's also activating your rotator cuff, your posterior cuff, anchoring the ball into the socket, getting those shoulder blades sort of tilted back and down into their most stable position. So the socket's in the most stable position, the ball's anchored into it, all the capsules winding up, and then everything further down the chain then has to work less hard. It doesn't have to work as hard because you've created maximal stability up here. Core to sleeve, core to extremity, whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing, whether you're sitting at the desk or you're doing. So I hope that explains that concept. I hope you've got a more of a clear understanding of how this works, rather than now you hearing it and it being hopefully it's more an understandable term rather than this kind of vague, ambiguous thing. We will see you in the next video. If you haven't already, find me on Athlete Fix Facebook, give us a like, jgphysiocoach.co.uk, check out the site, download the free ebook if you haven't already, sign up for the newsletter, and we'll see you next time. Take care.